Yes, it is.
There we go.
And so we're going to record this. So Leisure Lakes RV Park, we bought October of 2021, and we still own that. And all we're going to really do on this webinar is the process of how we found it, how we funded it, the difficult face in that process, and the deal structure, both from the debt and equity side. And then we're going to talk a good amount about what our as we start moving forward. And so, Jake, real quick, I don't think everyone's met you, so just give us a quick intro. What did you used to do? What do you do now? How'd you end up at Climb Capital?
All right. So my name is Jake Chambers. Joined the Corps about 15 years ago. I flew Cobras for the Marine Corps, did a couple of deployments, was an instructor here in Pensacola area. Started buying real estate about 5 years ago, single family homes, flips, rentals, and transitioned out of the Marine Corps, had one last set of orders, and decided to start getting into commercial real estate. So of all mobile home parks, that's actually where I knew Bob from before, but didn't realize we actually a little short-lived investor group that kind of got shut actually, but we ended up buying a small park and then bought a couple other bigger ones and started a whole company. Or shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say started. We had a company with a mine Tyler, and learned a lot about off-market deal acquisitions and dispositions. And so that is actually one of the big reasons and the for me to come into Climb Capital, because I run the things, the off-market deal acquisitions, are soon to be wholesaling business that we have in here as well. And then on this particular deal, because well, I guess I'll let you explain it. So.
Okay, so let's just talk about what the property is real quick, and how we found it. So the property is in Pensacola, Florida. Really, it's technically 30, out of that being wetland. It is a 60-unit RV park, and really, was run very much like a mobile home park.
Yeah.
In that virtually percent of the leases were all on a they weren't on an annual lease as you would normally try, but everyone stayed there and paid by the month. It's not a drive in on the night, do the bonfire marshmallows type place. It is certainly just long-term living and really not that great. 60 units there. It is right Navy Fed headquarters, so phenomenal location. Two big lakes there. It's right on 9 Mile Road, which next door is a brand new Publix being built, and down the street there is a brand new elementary school, and so all those great things were happening, but the park just really wasn't run as an RV park. And so, we had actually looked at this deal about 3 years. It was priced twice of what we bought it for. We put it on our contract about a year ago, or about 75% what they're asking. And we still were not able to make the numbers work. So we backed out of that deal, and then it came back around again last summer, and we went ahead and jumped on it. So Jake, how do you know about the park? Because you got a similar backstory.
Yeah. And so this park is literally underneath the airspace of an OLF that we used to use all the time. It's now been transferred out of the Navy's ownership, but we've been flying over for years for training. So, and I've always said, hey, I'm going to buy this park. Well, fast forward a couple of years, about how they the progression, how they worked it from the original ask down to where we bought it at, which we'll discuss more details in a minute. But in my wholesaling company, back to that, we actually have been working this lead for about 18 months. I thought we had an offer accepted, at least a verbal agreement at a pretty decent price, and then it kind of just went cold. We lost track with the sellers. It's not terribly uncommon And then we found out a little bit of backstory. I did after talking with Bob about the relationship between the two brothers that owned the park and the dad, and which is kind of a unique story in of itself. So that's how and then found out talking to Jeremy actually that so and then that's how we got to that point. So and then
Yeah. So quick numbers here. When we first looked at it, it was listed for $4 million, which is really absurd. I said we put it on our contract about a year and a half ago. We put it on our contract for 2.75 million, and it was getting close. Again, we couldn't make the numbers work. And then we finally ended up offering 2 million. They countered back at 2.35, and I think we finished at 2.275, which was the purchase price right there. And so, but the thing that a lot of things had changed from that 4 million to the 2.275. Obviously, the price became more reasonable, but more importantly, there was a big difference in it. And so, all back together. We also back in early 2021 bought 2 mobile home parks. One of the mobile home parks was off of a local realtor, and he was the owner and part owner and the realtor in that situation. So we had just finished closing that deal. So he knew of us. We knew we performed well. We did a good job, and he happened to get the listing for this RV park as well. And so we just bought a property off of him. Now he's listing here, and so we were able to talk to him and really get him, or he was able to, have confidence in us. And so he also coached the previous owners on, hey, you need to be able to prove the rents are in place and be able to bring the rent income up and clean up if you really want this price. And so really they had started to prove the rents from 600 to 850 on some of them, and had those tenants in place at 850. And so that's where we felt a lot more confident of being able to go in at that 2.25 price, knowing that the rents had already went up from 600 to 850 and proved that in place. Plus the area had dramatically improved over those last 2 or 3 years as well.
That entire road, turn it from a 2-lane to a 4-6 lane or whatever, and then obviously Navy Federal is going to get that land, or a lot of that land. That former base that I was talking about is all heavy mixed use commercial, as well as residential, and the houses are what, $600,000-$700,000 houses there.
Yeah, it's right by a nature trail, so really nice area. So we bought it October, ran it essentially the same way that the previous owner had run it through December, and then most recently we've started to what we'll call it reposition. It's that we've started to put in a lot of rules on the type of unit that can be on there, the age of the unit. We've had to get rid of a lot of the junk, external stuff. No air conditioner units, no tarps over the units, no homemade mobile or no homemade RVs. And so we're in that process right now of really kind of cleaning out the place, putting our foot down on collections. If rent's not in or due on the 5th, then you're going to get a late notice, right? And then just this last week, we've converted a number of the units, or a number of the pads over to CampSpot, which is our online hosting platform. And so now we're actually getting the nightly rentals. And so that revenue, again, we expect you 3 times the revenue from what we get from a monthly for the nightly. However, it's much more unstable. So going back to last, talked about the ratio of long-term, i.e. monthly rentals versus the nightly and weekly rentals. We like to have that, like a 60-40 split in there, because the monthly gives us the stability, the nightly gives us the high margins, even though it's a bit seasonal. So that's how we got it, right? And that's where our present stat is. Jake, why don't you tell them real quick about cabins and the future plan?
Yeah, so we actually just took delivery of our very first tiny home about 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, when we actually took delivery. We should have that thing up online. We're working with a manufacturer that we're actually dealers And we're going to be getting a total of 10 on the current order, and then we're going to be getting some more here, and they're going to go. We have another couple that are probably going to be going in Leisure Lakes, as well as a couple other parks, both here in Florida as well as up in Alabama and in Kentucky. So, and then future ones that we close down the road. So the plan is to bring them into some of the more primo spots. For example, this first one we brought in, and the net one right after it is going to be right on the lake that Bob was talking about. Really, really cool view, really serene. They all have their own private patios. The first one didn't end because we had a little bit of less customization we can do, but in for those Florida monster bugs. And then but then the ones are really cool. They're just under 400 square feet, and they're either a single master bedroom with a huge loft, or a two bedroom. And Bob had the idea of converting the two bedrooms into a two bedroom with an additional loft, which is a little bit smaller than the big lofts, but allows for sleeping area or major storage area. So
Yep.
That's kind of the plan. We're going to use those essentially as Airbnbs. So they are cabins, and that's what we're calling them for financing purposes, as well as insurability, and working inside of our dealer license that we currently have for the mobile home.
Yep.
So,
hey, can you guys add a little more about the financing for the park in general?
Yeah. So, and that's really, thanks, Alex. That's really kind of why I wanted to get in here today, is to talk about a little bit different way that we put this deal structure together. The loan itself was pretty conventional and straightforward, but the way that we funded this and worked with Jake there, and honestly, he made himself pretty invaluable, to the point where, like, well, we need to get him as part of Climb Capital instead of external.
Yeah.
So back when we put this together, wasn't part of Climb Capital. And it's also a way that we work with a lot of other partners, or have worked some partners or opportunities for work with us at Climb Capital besides just investing. And so
Alex actually did.
Yeah. And that's how we found Alex too. Right. So we've through osmosis here found the people who are become too expensive for us, and make sure that we get them on the team. So the debt wise, the pretty standard there. We got a 75% loan to cost loan through Heartland Bank, who is out of Cincinnati. They had financed a previous RV park for us that we have in Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati. And so we had a relationship with them. They are just now moving into the Florida market. They had just now hired a mortgage broker down in this area. So they were eager to kind of use this as a place to get in the door, and they had a relationship. And so we went with them. Okay terms. I think it was 4.5% interest, 20-year amortization, a year interest only. So nothing phenomenal on the loan itself, but it was very easy for us to get it done. Underwriting went quick. It appraised fine. On the deal structure side, though, this is something we did a good bit different than any previous deal. And what we did here is the LP GP split is a 50 split, meaning the limited partners, the investors got 50%, and the general partners, which is Climb Capital, got 50%. However, we structured this one where there was no, or there is going to be no split on the GP side until all the initial capital is paid back. And so with this, we raised 750.
Yeah, 750.
Yeah, 750 was the capital needed for the downside. And so that's where Jake, him and a few of his friends had the majority of the capital. And so Jake said, I've got all the capital. Let's partner on this 50-50 essentially from the LPGP side. And the way that we structured this is, again, where Climb Capital doesn't make their entirety and the investments paid back. Why did we do that? There's a big component here of development on the backside. There's an extra about 5 acres that will develop out into additional pads. I also think that we bought a really good deal. I think we can basically double the income here this summer when we get it converted from a mobile home park essentially to a actual nice RV park with amenities and cabins, et cetera. So I expect that we can recapitalize this within a year, return the entirety of the investment, and then thus makes it a great deal for Climb Capital. So, so Jake's component here was to, since he missed out on the deal, we had found the deal, and a little surprise there was that him and his partners, investors, were able to come on board and bring all the capital in one, basically a quick, swift check for us. And so that's the deal structure, 50-50 split, GP, LP, but 100% preferred capital.
Yeah, for capital.
Until that's back. So
yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate. Yep.
so
that's it.
So is that, Alex, does that get you what you were looking for on that one?
That's pretty thorough. I like, I mean, personally, I like that it was so flexible, which I think is important with debt financing. It can be easy to just say, you know, what were the terms, but the flexibility. And then also, you know, it's fun to reminisce about how both Jake and I got sucked into the Climb Capital cult, which I'm incredibly thankful for.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it did case study on the value of relationships. I mean, so earlier I knew Bob and Jeremy as fishing buddies, so they're pilot buddies before I even invested in real estate. They had been doing it for a little bit, but I didn't come on the scene until 2007 investing in real estate, and that was literally in single families deal until almost 2018 on the commercial side. So, you know, I had in my wholesaling business created relationships with, you know, with private money lenders to fund our fix and flips. And some of these guys were people that we had some mutual relationship with or knew, but, you know, we had worked personally with, and, you know, the high leadership position down here at Pensacola in the Navy, and he's getting ready to retire here soon. He's been a great investor with us, good friend, fishing buddy, and I was able to bring that in, and he was in a position where him and a couple other people had a significant amount of cash, and we didn't have any deals at the time. It's been a little bit slow on the single family flip acquisition side, at least for our business. And so we said, well, let's do this. And I had just recently gotten some decent liquidity from a couple sales that I had done. I said, hey, this is a park I wanted to do anyway. I trust not only in the asset type and class, obviously Pensacola is incredible, and it has nothing but growth ahead of it. And mine, and that I know who they are personally and morally and business wise, and it just made sense. And then that's ultimately the reason I came on to, you know, work as into the Climb, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise. So
yeah, it's good to have where he's doing some pretty good stuff, taking some wholesaling skills and moving those into the RV park side of it. So that was the deal structure. It's a little bit unique, a little bit different. I do see us as Climb Capital pursuing that a little bit more, meaning the heavy preferred return or higher preferred return or preferred capital, however you want to structure it. That just being full disclosure and honesty, it's a bit of a business decision for Climb Capital in that we've done this with apartment complexes and done well and had, an 80-20 split or 70-30 split. And the reality is, like, after you get all done, there's not, for a lot of work, when we do really, really well, it still doesn't benefit Climb Capital that much. And the investors do phenomenal, and we want to keep doing that. And so I think this is a little bit of a common space where if we do really, really well, we're both the investors and us are rewarded very well. And if we don't, the investors are protected even in that all the capital goes back to them first and foremost. So with these RV park deals where we see the potential for a lot higher returns, a lot more lucrative, I think we're going to probably pivot to this structure a little bit more. And we're continuing to work through that on each deal. But this was our first time doing this type of structure. So
well, one last question, and then I think unless you guys are about ready to go to Q&A.
Yeah.
How much does it depend, the structure? I mean, obviously it depends on investors. So like how many investors, what kind of investors you have, how much capital they provide to the total deal. Does that matter? Are you willing to be more flexible with somebody when they provide a good chunk of the equity?
Yeah. The obvious answer is yes. So on this one,
Layup.
yeah. Yeah. So there was only five total partners on this one. And again, a little bit other backstory. At the same time we were closing this, we were in the middle of 4 apartment portfolio purchase, doing a non-recourse bridge loan with a New York bank. And needless to say, we were just super busy during this time period. And this property purchase perspective was honestly on the back burner a lot of the days. It just, the other bank and the New York banker and all the stuff that we had to go through to get that done drove a lot of attention. So it got down kind of to the point where like, holy crap, we got a week to raise this money here. We forgot about this deal that we've got to get done. And so, Lord works out everything and for a reason, but yeah, if there's a flexibility and then we can do it like with one phone call, that makes things easier. So this was one of those times we had to take that route.
So what you're saying is that was your miracle.
For sure. That's a little
I'm just kidding.
Yes. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys wanted to cover about the deal, or you ready to go to Q&A? I know, Bob, you got a hard stop time.
Yeah. Right about 5.
About 20 minutes.
Yeah. I love to open a Q&A. I know this is this a little bit, we last couple of deals, we had the ability to talk whole complete deal, purchase and sale. So I feel like there's a lot more content, a lot more things to cover here. And this is our first purchase only deal. So hopefully you get value out of that, but we're really thinking that you'll have better questions and we can provide most of our value on this webinar through questions. So shoot them if you got them. You can come off of mute. You can show us your pretty faces, or you can type them in there. Oops, I'm on the wrong setting.
Yeah. While we're waiting, in case, do you want to talk about the business plan?
Yeah. Relatively simple, right? Phase 1, we'll call it the clean. That's where we move out a lot of the older, decrepit units, non-payers, problematic tenants, people who don't pass background checks, all that type of stuff. And that's where we're at. So we'll get that cleaned out. I would say we're getting pretty to finishing that up. There's a few more things that we need to do there. And then we'll physically start improving the property, adding back some amenities, fixing the playground as an example, a lot of landscaping, cosmetic fences, cleaning up the access to the lakes, and then also implementing the overnight, turning it into a campground, right? So that's kind of phase 2. Bring in the cabins, the short-term rentals. We should have that up and running by this summer, and where we're much more of just a normal campground where there are some long-term tenants, but there are also a lot of stays, and we'll have 2-3 cabins in place. The third phase really is the big push, and that's developing those backers into engineered right now for 40 additional pads. We're also contemplating the idea of taking that instead of doing 40 additional pads into covered long-term boat and RV storage. And so that'd be phase 3. Throughout that process, we'll capitalize there at the end of this year, or go look to get a construction loan to finish out that build out.
Cool. Okay. I don't see any questions. No questions this time. We had a lot the last 2 times. Bob, who is the MVP on this deal?
Well, I guess I got to give it to Jake since he's here with me.
Yeah.
That's why he came. He came to gloat.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jake gets to have it this time, and yeah, we'll give it. Brought all the money. So John, when's the planned exit? We look at all the deals at a pretty standardized 5 years. So when we do our underwriting, we're looking at, hey, what does this thing look like at a sale at 5 years? So we can always compare apples to apples. But really on this one, it's back to the deal structure of it. Our plan here is not to sell it, right? And that's why that preferred return, 100% or giving all the capital back at the beginning is critical to us and to the investors, and makes it worth it for both of us to keep it. So the really true exit is to get this thing with renovated and developed, and then have all that cash flow, and then refinance it and have nothing invested and continue to hold this property. It's in a critical part of Pensacola, and property that 20 years from now, the land value probably quadruples for what it presently is. So it really isn't an exit plan except for to get the capital back as soon as possible.
That's kind of in general for RV parks that we're kind of pivoting to. So I mean, that is kind of important for, is that you can't run an indefinite pro forma. I mean, you can, I guess, but like you typically run it for 5 years. So that's going to be kind of in the OM, but the plan is a hold. But like Bob said, the reason for the way we did the distribution plan, or the preferred capital. So, because essentially after, a couple of years, you got all your money back. It's just, you might not get the big, check at the end, like on a lot of these, but you've also got your money back a lot sooner, and just let it ride.
Well, and it's a bit of a form of land banking. We haven't talked about this much as well, but most RV parks or mobile home parks, really, you are buying and holding and controlling a large amount of acreage for a long period of time. And so, that's an important component, particularly to this one, in that it's a good amount of acreage in a great location. And so it serves as a perpetual land bank for us over a long time. So it's cash flowing, a lot of land, a lot of control. We can always continue to refinance it and pull out capital as we need it to make sure that equity is still being appropriately used. But that's kind of what's driving the lack of exit desire.
Yeah.
I know John has another question, but I wanted to jump in on that topic specifically. If you do a hold forever, which I'm super for, I'm a long-term buy it forever kind of guy, but to play devil's advocate, what does that mean for return on equity? Because after a while, I mean, you're implying that you have to refinance.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, if a good return on your equity that's sitting there, and most savvy investors have to consider that. It's more than just return on investment. You got to start looking at your return on equity. Where's that money best used? And so the answer to that is a recapitalization event, where that you refinance it and you pull out that capital. So you reduced your equity, you got your capital back, and then you put that back in place. And so you have to continue to, that's what we're looking at, I would say on a weekly base here, of what's our equity in this property? Should we sell it? Should we what's the best use? Can we put that money to better use somewhere else, or is it making the best return, whether that's in the form of equity or capital? Where is it presently sitting? And that's what we're we had a lot of like coffee cup discussions around Climb Capital every day on that specific topic.
Yep. That's a good question.
John's got another good question on do the parks have tax savings like an apartment complex and segregation? Actually, yes. So this was a big surprise for us last year. As we, Jeremy and I had kind of been under the assumption that, all right, well, there's not a lot of structures here. Probably not worth doing probably not a lot of tax benefit. So fortunately, we mentioned it to our cost seg guy, and he's like, yeah, actually, mobile home parks, RV parks, given the fact that the vast majority of your cost infrastructure is in the road and in the plumbing and electrical and all that stuff, we can do the same thing, and we get close to the same ratio there, because of the cost obviously is allocated to the land value is always significantly cheaper. So yes, we're doing a cost on this cost seg on RV park we bought in Coleman. Very similar ratios that you would expect to see in an apartment complex on the tax savings side. I'll kick it over to Jake actually, because there is an interesting part on the cabins. That you're a little bit more of an expert on the vehicle side.
Oh yeah, expert might be a stretch, but I appreciate it. Yeah. So one cool thing that we afterthought, but a good afterthought is and I thought of this because I had bought back in 21. I had gotten out of the Marine Corps, and we get like a big, Bob got it the year before, like a big check, and that's a taxable event. Plus I had sold a property. I had a decent taxable income last year, so I needed to use ways to offset it. And so I ended up buying a new, F-250, and I was able to use which yeah, I know they give me a hard
Stuff.
time. It's neat, and I do YouTube videos on it, so they give me a hard time. But anyway, you can use IRS Section 179 on vehicles, and this for 6,000 pound gross weight, I can depreciate the entire amount off of it, the entire $75,000 price. Where I'm going with this, considering an RV or a tiny home is essentially titled the same way as an RV. So obviously well over 6,000 pounds. So we can depreciate the entire amount year one on these tiny homes. So since we just bought 10 of them at a pretty good clip,
About 70 grand.
you can do the math on that, and we're going to get a pretty good depreciation event. Obviously, if we were ever to sell it, we'd have to pay, recapture is still applicable, but just like it would be on a cost seg or anything like that. But that almost kind of forces you into buying a bigger, better deal, and then just doing a cost seg on that one, and kind of a poor man's or a roundabout 1031 without actually doing a 1031. So that's a
Right.
great opportunity for people who may be interested in investing and putting individual tiny home into a park, being able to write off that entire amount and then still get the cash flow. So that's an opportunity for not only the owners, but also individual investors. If you maybe don't have a decent amount to put in, if there's a minimum investment, or it's just not the right time, you can always backfill with a significantly cheaper vehicle.
Yeah. So as the owners of the property, we bought some, but Jake as an individual has bought some cabins, and or Jeremy as individuals have bought cabins and then put them on properties too, just for them tax savings. So a lot of really unique opportunities that we've learned over the last year in RV parks, even on the tax saving side. So great question. Thanks, John.
And it's irrelevant of debt too. So you can finance the entire amount if you wanted
That's a good
to,
point.
and you can still depreciate the entire purchase price. So if the tiny home, if you get 10% down, you can still depreciate 100% of it. So pay $7,000 down, it's closing costs, and you can write off 70 grand.
Right. We're not people buy airplanes and jets for
Which we're also doing.
Jake is doing. All right. So I don't want to belabor this, but if you guys have any other last questions, let's please spit them out there. Otherwise, well, thank you all for your time and attention and following along. We actually got a bunch more of these lined up. We had a pretty crazy, we'll call it October to January 31st here at Climb Capital. I think we bought and sold 8 different properties. And so we've got a lot to catch up on. So we're basically doing one of these. Obviously, the ones that we've sold are a lot easier to talk about than the ones we've just bought a few months ago, but want to take that opportunity to kind of build the rhythm here and let you guys ask questions, or heck, if you got something we need to know, let us know, so we can learn as well on this process of buying and selling. And
yeah, maybe something to consider. If you think I do this all the time, I'm like the best at thinking of something after the conversation has happened. So if you think of anything that we talked about that didn't make sense, or you're like, oh, I should have asked this, feel free to reach out to either any of us, but probably Alex. He can we can kind of prep or do kind of a recap of the previous one real quick to answer some old questions, or I don't know how he wants to run that, but that might be a good way to get those questions, because there are a lot of steps and things going on. So there's no way to make all the questions in one event.
Yeah, I'm easy to talk to. Don't be shy. If you do have a bunch of questions, that'd be neat, because then we could do maybe just a full another video on, we could, a lot of content we can make. And like Bob said, we got probably 6-7 more of these already planned on the calendar for the next few weeks. They're all going to go on YouTube. And if anybody has, I just want to reiterate, if anybody has either, the deal, the the partners, what the one piece of the deal and missing the other,
Mhm.
we Climb Capital will happily partner up with you and maybe take down a deal. That's how Jeremy came on board. That's how I came on board. It's a good process to win with friends.
Well, that's how Jake came over. I
Yeah,
think
all of us.
I think I
more or less.
inherited Jeremy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Jake.
so
Yeah.
okay, all right. Well, let's close it out. Alex, close this out. Tell us what we need to do next, and we're going to record it, put it on.
Yeah, this is going to go on
YouTube.
YouTube. So would love everybody to subscribe on the YouTube channel. There's not much there yet, but there's a couple of these deep dives, and there's going to be more of them. Probably most people saw this through, I think, our MailChimp, our newsletter. So subscribe to the YouTube, the Climb Capital website, and you can get the updates. Obviously, we're on social media. Jeremy's on TikTok. I'm trying to get the entire world to go watch him talk about RV parks on TikTok. But yeah, we'll be here next week. We're pretty easy to get a hold of. Reach out to me if you want to talk to anybody in particular. If you want to have like a Zoom chat with Bob or Jake or myself or anybody, either I can set that up or I can get you in touch with their Calendly. So pretty easy to get a hold of and talk to.
All right, y'all have a good weekend. See you.
See you guys.